converted man here. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing. I swear. All right. There's no archaeology that proves the Bible. Yeah, there isn't any. We'll get into that. But also, faith is belief without evidence, which is something that theists love to pretend isn't a thing. They love to say, no. Faith is equivocation. Even though, and theists, broadly speaking, but theists, specifically the Christian theist, well, no, your own Bible tells you what faith is. It's confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we don't see. So that's not evidence, not even a little. But faith is also defined in several places, in several dictionaries, as belief in God, trusting in God, devotion, or having a firm belief, even without proof, complete confidence. These are not things that you necessarily have evidence for. Faith is defined as a strong belief in God or doctrines of religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. The meaning of faith is allegiance to duty, or, it could be confidence or trust in a person, a thing, or concept. But in the context of religion, faith is a belief in God or the teachings therein. So again and again, they want the trust part of faith, but the belief without evidence part, no, they don't want that. They want to believe that they have evidence. They don't, but they want to believe that. Now, in these discussions, occasionally will come up the archaeological evidence, which years ago I dug into, joke intended, and didn't find anything that impressed me, and rather found many, many frauds that turned me away from this search, because you don't lie when you have the truth. So the other part, of course, is that people don't really look into the archaeology themselves. They usually rely on others to do that. Like, obviously others have to do the archaeology, but I mean, they don't research to see what archaeology has been done, and who did it, where, when, all that. It's a lot to dive into, but there's some places that you can, kind of skip to the end. So anyways, let me just mention this Agape person who James interacted with, and he says he asked for proof evidence but dismissed the historical archaeologist that points to him. So this is kind of the low-key biblical person that I'm referring to here. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. There isn't any archaeology that points to God. At best, the archaeology could confirm famous people or locations. The same sort of thing that you could do in regards to New York's existence, and therefore Spider-Man's real. The few things that you will find that prove certain events took, or certain locations are real. Events taking place is harder, and maybe even impossible to do with archaeology. And of course, the people of Jerusalem and others have a financial incentive to lie to people. So you got to be really careful with looking for evidence. Bible and Theology, the gospelcoalition.org has this article explaining why, 4 different reasons why archaeology can't prove the Bible. Starts by saying the goal isn't to prove the Bible, and explains that. Then it says Bible presents an enormous historical and geographical portrait of the ancient world, and talks about that. And then archaeology is unable to address the Bible's theological claims. That's the very important part there. And archaeology discoveries can confirm but cannot prove the Bible. They can confirm certain places exist, certain people existed, or that we should be more sure about their existence, but that's it. And even says, look, it's yes, you should explore this, but it's not something that you should just regurgitate to the skeptics. It's not going to help. So I left the link for that in the description. This website's pretty darn decent. ScienceMeetsReligion.org, having a lot to say about the archaeology claims, and it talks about the questionable and fraudulent archaeological claims. These are some that I came across. Mentions Noah's Arks. Yeah. Noah's Ark, when I looked into it, however many years ago that was, it had been discovered about 5 different times and refuted every time. Or this one guy claimed that Noah's Ark was on top of a mountain that he owned. He owned a mountain. Really amazing. But as he and the reporter, this documentary, the guy wasn't a reporter, but he was making a documentary about this. And they're walking up to go see it. And he's like, halfway up, he's like, yeah, I don't want to see. I don't want you to see it. I'm sorry. You're going to have to go back down now. And so the guy's like, well, okay. He's like, he'd done this whole documentary, so it was like, yeah, you can't see it. So, anyways, and then there are other things that have been shown to not be true. Then he goes into some stuff that has been shown, on things that haven't been shown, like Noah's flood, and he talks about how Noah's flood didn't happen, thankfully, and the Exodus and the chronological issues there, and there are Egyptians don't really have slaves, they had slaves, but they didn't necessarily have Jewish slaves, maybe, but there's no mention of an exodus of slaves. So yeah, and if you actually, again, that's it's in the description. You can read that more. But why would the theologian bother? They know that this stuff is true without having to look into it. And usually, my interaction with theists has been that the theist asserts without doing any actual research on their own. They don't look into it. They don't examine it. They just assume it's true. And maybe they look at a couple websites and go, oh, that's it, it's true. That's good enough for them. There was one even lying about the domestication of animals I found. But you could tell how quality it was because it was a bunch of slides that looked like they were drawn in MS Paint. So, chef's kiss there. I should have shown that website, but it was too ridiculous. But anyways, so no, archaeology doesn't prove the Bible and could only maybe confirm a few places and a few people, which, yeah, there are a few places that have been confirmed and a few people that we can be a little bit more certain that exist than not, or that at least somebody was named that at the time. Okay, not really a lot to go on, but it's something. But why the equivocation of faith? It's trust in Jesus. It's trust. Yeah, well, you know how much archaeology there is to prove Jesus? None. Not a bit. Nothing at all. Not a thing. So there's a problem. But again, the apologist isn't going to look for this, or the person of faith isn't going to look into it because they want to maintain faith. When I looked for the evidence, I found there wasn't any. That's why I deconverted. But the people of faith, they don't want that to be true, so they're not going to look for themselves. And if they do look, they're going to try to find things that always confirm their position and not look for things that don't confirm it. And they're not going to be skeptical about it because they want it to be true. And then they're going to project the faults they have in themselves onto others. And this is a repeating pattern that's happened time and again, and I'm sure will happen more. But no, faith is belief without evidence. You don't have any evidence. If you did, you wouldn't need the word faith. And if faith is just confidence, then you don't need the word faith. You could just say, I have confidence in God. Kind of has a different ring to it, don't you think? You have confidence that God exists. Huh, interesting. Well, what makes you so confident? You still need proof, so it doesn't change anything. You still don't have proof. And this YouTube video I just had done last time I was live, where the guy was saying, it doesn't matter, what evidence there is for the Bible, because like that could all get wiped out. And he imagined a nuclear blast that would take it out, but it wouldn't take that much to take it out. But yeah, if whatever evidence there is for anything that happened in the past was wiped out, then what records would you have of the past? You'd only have the writings. So he says that's why you should just use the Bible, right? Because that's all in the end, that's all you're going to have if that happened. Yeah. So why would God do that? Why would God make a system that is so potentially flawed that the only record of it could be a writing that we know humans did, and we know that humans can make up stories, and we know humans are wrong. The other thing, I don't think that those that believe in any God, broadly speaking, but specifically the Judeo-Christian God, is asking themselves questions about the Bible, because it's written with an all-seeing narrator view. Why is it written like that? Why is it written like a book and not like history? Where was the document found? What fragments were found? When? Where? By whom? How much was found? How was it determined what was and what wasn't canon? What methods were used to decide that? And what group of people performed that operation? When was the Bible translated into English? In fact, there was a documentary I watched about that. It was really interesting. But why don't they know the answers to these questions? Because it doesn't matter. Because what matters is Jesus this, Jesus that. I don't care. Jesus is a fictional character made up by people. He didn't exist. He doesn't exist. And if he did exist, he dead and he lied. Now here's the other thing. There's a lot of detail about what Jesus says, and yet that sort of detail, how in the world did somebody record accurately all that stuff while Jesus was saying it? How fast of a writer would you have to be to do that? Have you ever listened to a very long speech and tried to write it down afterwards or during the speech? Who was there with Jesus writing down everything he said? It doesn't ever say that either. And that's an interesting omission, that it never says, I am Luke and I am recording Jesus saying these things. The Gospel of Luke doesn't outlay it like that, nor does any of the other Gospels. And we don't even know that these people, even though the Gospels are called the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we don't know that they wrote it. We don't know who wrote it. these people are all actually anonymous, and if you actually did the research, you'd find that out. But again, you don't want to do that because that would show that you're wrong about these ideas, and thus you're potentially wrong about there being any evidence for your God. But simply put, I'll do what the apologists love to do. Look around you. Yeah, I don't see God anywhere. They love to do the whole painting thing. This is a repeated so many. Oh, look at the painting. And you know there's a painter. Yeah, because we can see a painter. But what we can't see is your God. So there's a difference there. Oh, well, you can tell it's created. Well, can you, though? If it's an abstract painting, how could you tell that it was made by a person and not made by just splashing some paint on a canvas? Like by accident. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And now with AI, if I just tell AI to make a painting, it can do that. So, very little human input required anymore. I don't think you can tell the difference. So, yeah, your analogy doesn't work, and it's never worked. The appeal to design isn't valid. It isn't sound. Or even if you could structure it to be valid, I doubt it, because these people also don't usually know formal and or informal logic. And I'm here to constantly try to promote informal logic and say, look, your arguments suck. And in many cases, you don't even have an argument. You need to fix that. It's not good enough. And in regards to this person I mentioned, I referenced, they don't even want to come talk. Yeah, I've seen how that goes. Yeah, I've seen how theists can treat atheists. And I've seen how atheists sometimes treat theists. But I've also seen it go really well. I've done many interviews with theists. And those have all gone pretty darn well. But of course, he doesn't want to speak. Because he's afraid. He's afraid that his ideas will be actually put to the test and scrutinized, and that he'll be demanded for proof that he cannot and will not produce because it doesn't exist. There isn't proof of a God. That's the problem. It is belief stacked upon belief stacked upon belief. And on a different comment thread, I at least got one theist to kind of acknowledge that. Because he was saying, I believe in Christ because I believe that good and evil are real. And they're like, yeah, okay, good and evil are concepts that exist, but what does that have to do with Christ? And it seems that they just wanted there to be a Christ so that there's maybe an eternity that they could look forward to. I just listened to a podcast about Sigmund Freud. And he had this idea that the afterlife was invented by people because they're scared of death. That seems about right. And Sigmund Freud was probably wrong about a lot of things, but he got that one right. I don't like the idea of not being a thing, but also I've been not a thing occasionally from time to time, and it doesn't bother me. When I'm asleep and I'm not aware that I'm asleep, not bothered by the fact that I don't exist during that moment. At least I'm not conscious, so, And when I went under for colonoscopy, I didn't exist in that moment while I was under. Like, I just wasn't there. And I didn't even know that I wasn't there. So, is that what death is? I don't know. I have no idea. Don't know. Not looking forward to find it out. Don't want to find out. But, then they, of course, have the last resort. Oh, you'll be wrong. You'll find out when you die. Find out what? That there's actually an afterlife? Maybe. I don't know. But your God can't exist because your God is illogical. So the God of the Bible is definitely off the table for a candidate of actual gods. But also an afterlife could exist in a naturalistic way without any need of anything supernatural at all. It's just about probability and time. And maybe I'll talk about that one day, but it's purely very, very, very hypothetical, very, very based on loose concepts, and not something I actively believe, but it could actually happen. Anyways, so yeah, that's it. I don't know. Didn't have really much else to say about this. Faith is just belief without evidence. That's all you've ever had and all you ever will have. And what archaeology there is doesn't prove the Bible true. And lots of stuff shows that things didn't happen that the Bible says that happened. So that actually should say that the Bible isn't factual in some regard. So, you know, if you're going to be a biblical literist, then the Bible's false because one part is false. If you're more open to parts of the Bible not being true, then great. You can admit that there are things that have been shown to be false. But then you should take that part out of the Bible then. You should do some heavy editing to only have the things that have been confirmed in the Bible. But then, of course, there's the theology of the Bible, which is unprovable by archaeology and unprovable by any other methodology that exists. All you have for the theology is the theology. You either believe it is true without any evidence that it is, or you're a skeptic. I think being skeptical is the better road to take. And until next time, be skeptical. And after that, stay skeptical.